And that's the hard part of this work. It's such human work that we're doing, right? The people are the work, as I've said before, right? The people are the work. And so when you're investing your life into the lives of other people, goodbyes are hard.
Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of reflection and collaboration as we seek to keep growing as teachers. This podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 111th episode of the Hallway Conversations podcast. My name is Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Friends, thanks to our sponsors at CASE, the Center for the Advancement of Christian Education. To learn more about the different ways that CASE can support your school, your board, your leadership team, teachers, or community, we encourage you to visit their website at www.case.org. That's CACE.org. Finally, if you have a suggestion for a future podcast topic, we'd love to hear from you. Send your suggestions to hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. Friends, we are recording this during exam week on our campus. There's a definite winding down to the year, and for me personally, that comes with mixed emotions. These students bring an energy and joy to my life, this campus, and even this town, and it gets a little sleepy around here in the summer without them.
So true.
Yet, it is also time for a rest, and I feel that in my bones, I feel that in my mind. I'm ready for some Sabbath and to step away from the grind of the school year, and I look forward to a different pace for a while. We also want to say that we are going to take the summer off from potting. In the past, if you've listened, you know that in the summer we do a few episodes or post old ones, but this summer we're just going to go underground for a few months, and we hope to come back in August with new topics and new guests, and we hope you join us back in the hallway. Abby and Dave, we often talk to our students and even each other about ending well. So my question for you is, what does it look like for you to end well? And maybe before we even do that, just how are you doing at the end? Let's just step back for a second. Abby, how are you doing at the end of this year? Like,
that's a hard question.
What do you find yourself reflecting on?
Yeah, good. It's busy. And so I think too, I like education because there are definite endings, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are chapters and there are lists that you get to the bottom of.
Why?
Right?
Can you talk about that a bit, actually? Because you're not the first person. Like, why is that ending for you important or even satisfying?
Well, and it's also hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially when you teach seniors, when you teach... Like, I always taught seniors every year I taught in high school. And May was my least favorite month. Because it meant that I had to start over, right? After these kids leave and you see how far they come. Right. And we have the same thing with teachers, right? So, I teach all the seniors here in the fall semester. I watch them all student teach, and I'm so thrilled that they get to go out and do what they love. But then I think, they're at the, you see them at the end, and then, you go back and you teach freshmen who are wonderful. And also, it's that starting over this semester. It's a constant. So I like it, and it's good, and also the end is hard.
And there's a big difference between being an 18-year-old freshman and a 22-year-old senior whose life and classes and relationships have all deepened in there. That does something to them.
A lot of our student teachers have stopped back in the last week, and so there's been goodbyes. I don't know if I'll see you at graduation, so that kind of thing. And so it's always satisfying, and it's always...
Two things can be true.
Yeah, that's right.
It's hard.
Dave, how about you at the end of the year?
I really resonate with what you said, Abby, and I feel that too. Like the sense of the rhythms of the school year, that's one of the things that I think we, maybe in education, we take that for granted because we have such clear beginnings and middles and ends of things. And there's beauty in that, and it's hard. Too. And I thought, similar to what you're saying, when teaching high school students, I always taught 8th graders, and so they were kind of at the culmination of their, that elementary, middle school experience, and they're heading into something different. And I think there's probably some sense of that for every teacher. Like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who teaches 2nd grade, and she said that too. Like, when you get these kids coming in your classroom at the beginning of the year, they're really 1st graders. And at the end of the year, they're really 3rd graders. And, what happened in between there? Like, that was 2nd grade. It's and So maybe, I don't know, listeners, maybe you feel that sense too. Like whether it's in 1 year's time or when you think about the progression over a couple of years for those of us who teach middle school, high school, we see that transition coming. And I think that's the thing that just makes it challenging for me at the end of the year too. Because you love these kids. You love the students you get to
And
teach.
you invest in them.
Totally. And that's the hard part of this work. It's such human work that we're doing, right? The people are the work, as I've said before, right? The people are the work. And so when you're investing your life into the lives of other people, goodbyes are hard. Yeah. So
the hardness of it is what makes it beautiful. Like I sometimes think like
there's a line in a movie, right? The heart is what makes it great. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. Anybody know it?
No.
It's A League of Their Own. It's one of my favorites.
Oh wow.
that's right.
The heart is what makes it great.
But it's true. Like
sure.
sometimes I think about that. I mean, I think about that for students and for teachers. Like, how sad would it be if it wasn't hard? Right? Like, how sad if it was.
I'm out. Let's go.
I'm out. Right? Like, I always think about that even when students leave home to come to campus here. Like, what God's grace is that there were tears. Because for some students, they've never had people cry over them when they leave or cry when they show up, and even for us as teachers, right? It's like, the heart is what makes it great. So it's a good reminder.
Tom Hanks, it's a good movie.
Tom Hanks. Is there a bad Tom Hanks movie?
No,
That's a whole different podcast. So a couple weeks ago, I gave my end of April spiel to students about ending well. Like, hey, what does this mean to end well? But then I also thought to myself, what does it mean for teachers to end well? And so I'm thinking about it in that context. No, it's not so much for our students, but our teachers or even our school leaders. Like, what comes to mind when you think a winding down and ending well as a teacher or faculty member? Any thoughts that come to mind, or just even for you to say, like, to end well, I need to do these things?
I think there's a celebration component to ending well, right? Celebration of learning, celebration of milestones. That's why we often have like award ceremonies at the end of the year or something like that for different things. And I think there's something beautiful about that. It's kind of like setting up your Ebenezer stone, like, hey, thus far the Lord has been faithful along with us, right? There's kind of a sense of that. Like we had a couple weeks ago, our education club on campus, they put on a banquet at the end of the year, and they have kind of some opportunities to just like pause and remember and give thanks. I think that's really good. And a lot of K-12 schools have some version of that, like things that you do every year in the springtime. Like, I think that's so good to have those, because we do mark time that way, right? And seeing God's faithfulness through it. So I think that's a big part of it for me, thinking about ending well. Like, how do we build in those times?
Tomorrow,
right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a big thing.
How about for you, Abby? Things that you're like, hey, like these are things on, like you say, like there was an ending, but to end well, what is
there's
sort
a
of
list,
like,
right?
Isn't that the truth? There is a list.
There's absolutely a list. I think I ask my students to reflect usually in my classes. I am always more interested in, like, I'm interested in their exam scores, for example, like objectively, but I'm also really interested in what they feel like was the most significant piece of learning and why, right? Like and so I always ask that question, and I think it's good for educators to ask themselves that question. So here's how I agree. We have at Dort, we have these ACD plans, these academic development. What does that acronym even stand for?
Annual contribution
and development. Okay, plans. Yep. So our goals and if we've met them, and that's kind of like an exam, right? Like here's an accounting, but also then what was my bigger takeaway from the year, right? Like what things do I want to carry forward and just reflect on that a little bit and maybe write about it a little bit, things like that.
So. Can I ask you about that then? Like, what are some of the things that you might want to carry? I haven't done it yet. We're putting you on this. But just if you reflect then, or maybe like one of the protocols that I use sometimes in classes is shapes protocol, like circle, square, triangle. So maybe at the end of this year, like, hey, what's sort of circling around in your head as you sort of reflect on this semester or year, or did something happen, whether with students, content-wise, that sort of squares with your thinking or sort of affirms what you believe about pedagogy or learning or relationship, or or even a triangle? Like, are you making a connection between, hey, something that happened this year and some other part of your life or your learning? So maybe just a shapes protocol reflection, a circle, a square, or a triangle. So like for me, like something that really squared with my thinking this year is that young people actually love learning. Like, I think they love learning.
Yeah.
I think they love asking questions. What also squared with my thinking is that young people have so much to offer that I can learn from. Like, I'm always, I shouldn't say surprised, but I still, like, in a beautiful way, how much I learn from these wonderful 18 to 22-year-olds,
Absolutely.
or from some of the grad students that I teach with, that it's like, where I can literally look at them and say, I've never thought of that before. Yeah. I've never thought of that perspective.
That's like, such a good thing.
And it is such a good thing, right? And it squares with my thinking in terms of, like, I know it to be true, and yet when it happens, they give me a lot that's circling around in my head. So I think that's just something I was, I had this wonderful undergrad class this year that I feel like taught me so much and blessed me in so many different ways in what I know about education, but just even in who they are and how they learn and the value of relationships, and even the beauty of laughing with them and praying with them, that they do want to be in relationship with each other and even with us. They want us to be in their lives. So I think that's just something that's squared with my thinking and what I know to already be true, but was really affirmed. How about you, Dave? A circle, a square, a triangle?
So I've got a couple of things that are coming to mind for me. And so I teach this course, Educational Robotics, which is just delightfully good fun for me. And this is my second time teaching the course, and it's a small group. I have 4 students this time, right? And I'm trying to grow that, but so this is maybe one that's squared for me. This idea of, in STEM education in particular, there's a lot of talk lately about learning by tinkering, and not having such, like, you still have to have a clear learning target of what you're aiming for, but then to get out of the way as a teacher and let the students have a whole lot more input, and to just let them, like, try and fail and play around, and now I learned this, and so we're going to try this, and I can apply it like this. And so I tried to just absolutely embody that pedagogy this semester, and I'd done some reading and some prep about it, and I set it up so the students knew, like, this is what I'm doing. Like, we have some tutorials, things that I'm going to teach you specifically, but just enough so you know what you're doing, and then we're just going to play. And they bought it. Like, they full on, they just grabbed it. And it was so great to see them just with joy and delight in the things that they got to try out. And we had a lot of successes. We had failures along the way, right? But it was kind of that sense of, if I can say, that we had the right spirit in the room there. Like, we're all in this together, and we're all going to learn from each other. And so our failures aren't really failures, because it's something, now I know what doesn't work, so I can use that to do something different, right? And these folks who are taking this class are going to go out and be STEM teachers, and they're going to be amazing. They're going to be absolutely amazing in the schools that God calls them to serve. And so that just really squared with my thinking, like, the kind of pedagogy that I'm preaching to them, when I practice it myself, it actually worked. Right?
Yeah, and I'm making a connection with what you're talking about, Dave, in terms of that line, like, culture eats practice for breakfast. Like, when you talk about there was the right spirit, right? And I know you are so good at setting a learning culture where it's safe to make mistakes, but it's just a reminder, right? It starts with the teacher, right? But how do you create this culture? And you can have all those other things, but I had a student in grad. Some of you remember Lucas was in our program a couple of years ago. He's doing his master's now in our grad ed, and he just had this simple line. It was like, learning starts with belonging, and I was just like, wow, like.
That hit you.
Yeah, I just, like, I'm talking about culture, right? Like a sense of belonging and a sense of, like, this is my space and I belong here, and boy, that's just so important. So thanks for sharing that. How about you, Abby? A circle, a square, a triangle?
It's a good one. Yeah, I taught a course for the first time again this semester. That I haven't done in a while. So it was a new course to me. So I've been working here for 7 years, and I don't remember.
7 years?
Yeah.
It sneaks up.
KG veteran.
Right.
That's right.
And I think the last new course I had was probably 4 years ago,
yeah.
something like that. Like, so everything else I teach is a repeat, right? And so I taught a new course for the first semester. And so I think for me too, it was a reminder and things that squared with what I know about backwards planning. And ironically, the course was a planning course, so I taught students backwards planning.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was telling you, I do a reflection of learning, and that was the piece that so many of them said made so much sense to them. These future teachers, this is their first planning course, planning assessment instruction, and also that intentionality of being and embodying the pedagogy that I'm teaching them.
It matters so much.
So I would lesson plan the class I was teaching to them and show it to them.
Wow.
Oh,
Right?
like the meta learning of showing.
Right. Yeah.
what
So
you're doing.
I use the word meta a lot. Finally, one of my students raises his hand and goes, "You keep using that word. What does it mean?"
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was like, "Well, this is what it means, right?" So now they say it all the time. But
That's great.
but like just that idea of this makes sense.
Yeah.
This is logical, right? We start at the end of where we want to be, and then we work backwards and we think through the steps
How am I going
that
to
it
get my
takes
students
to,
there?
and it's so simple and yet it's so profound. And I think back to when I started teaching and I didn't teach that way. Right? I taught, okay, this is what I'm doing today. And then at the end I would say, okay, I'm going to look back and now what are we going to test over?
Right.
Versus that intentionality of where are we going and how can we build the thing we need to get to that ending destination.
Right.
No, that's great.
Yeah. So it's great. Works on a lot of levels, actually.
Very meta.
Right?
Very meta. I think part of, as we wrap up here, Dave and Abby, I think part of ending well is also remembering. And I just want to acknowledge that we lost a friend this year in Steve Holtrop. And I just want to, whether dedicate this episode or just for us to acknowledge that we loved him and we miss him. And
Definitely.
one of the things Steve always reminded me of is like, hey, like keep the mission and vision, like do the good things and do them well. Don't chase numbers, don't chase enrollment. Just keep the main thing. And we miss him like crazy. Steve, we miss you, and it's not the same without you, but I just want to acknowledge that happened
good.
this year.
That's right.
Friends, we know your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today and for this year for another hallway conversation. And whether it is this day, this week, this month, or this school year as it ends, we hope the Lord gives you what you stand in need of. And we'd like to send you from here with this blessing. So to our listeners, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace and give you peace and give you peace. Amen. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
This podcast was literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Hey, we have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to rate this podcast or write a review in your podcast app? Or if you found this conversation interesting or helpful, would you consider sharing it on your social media? Those things really do help podcasters out, and we would be so, so grateful. Thanks for listening, friends.
All right. Okay. Good job, everybody, this week so far.
Hey, that's right. We're making it.
Yeah.
Going on hiatus.
Yeah, it's good. That's a
good.
good time for a rest.
It is.